welcome back to another episode of Revealing Biblical Truths. In this video, I will be discussing Genesis chapters 23 to 27. This content covers the death of Sarah, Isaac finding Rebekah, the death of Abraham and Ishmael, the birth of Ya'acob and Esau, and Isaac's blessing to his sons. Before we begin, be sure to like, share, subscribe, and comment down below if you want me to do other topics. So chapter 23 opens up and Sarah dies at 127 years old. So Isaac was 27 when she died. Abraham went to the sons of Heth, to Ephron the Hittite, and buys the cave of Machpelah from him for 400 shekels of silver. I put a link in the description to the video I did covering the archaeological evidence for the cave of Machpelah in this video. And that ends chapter 23. In chapter 24, Abraham wants Isaac to find a wife, but makes him promise not to take a wife from the Canaanites. So Isaac says okay, and his servant Eliezer goes up to the city of Nahor in the north. He comes to the city and sees Rebekah come out to get water. Rebekah is Isaac's cousin. Rebekah draws water for him and his camels. We are also introduced to Laban, who is Rebekah's brother. Isaac ends up convincing the family to let her be his wife, and she goes with him. They arrive back home, and Rebekah sees Isaac. So they go into the tent and they become married. And that's the end of chapter 24. There's an interesting corollary to this in the book of Jasher, chapter 24. It states, "And the young woman was very comely in appearance. She was a virgin, and Rebekah was 10 years old in those days. And Bethuel and Laban and his children made a feast on that night, and Eliezer and his men came and ate and drank and rejoiced there on that night. And Eliezer rose up in the morning, he and the men that were with him, and he called to the whole household of Bethuel, saying, Send me away, that I may go to my master. And they rose up and sent Rebekah and her nurse Deborah, the daughter of Uz, and they gave her silver and gold, men servants and maidservants, and they blessed her. And they sent Eliezer away with his men, and the servants took Rebekah, and he went and returned to his master in the land of Canaan. And Isaac took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he brought her into the tent. And Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah, the daughter of his uncle Bethuel, for a wife." So if this is true, Isaac was 40 and Rebekah was only 10. Kind of weird, but however, it was culturally acceptable to do this at that time, as puberty was the sign of becoming a woman, and she was of the age of consent, as she asked her father if she was willing. The father asked her if she was willing to go, and she said yes. Chapter 25 tells us that Abraham married again, and her name was Keturah. Keturah comes from the root word ketur, meaning smoke. Interesting. She had a few children also, and then Abraham dies at age 175. Isaac and Ishmael then bury him in the cave of Machpelah. The chapter continues and goes to the descendants of Ishmael, and then tells us that Ishmael dies at age 137. Shifting back to Isaac, Rebekah becomes pregnant and has twins. The first comes out red, and his name is called Esau. Later, Esau was known as Edom. And in Hebrew, Edom and Adam have the same letters and mean red earth. Jacob came out next, and he grabbed the heel of his brother Isaac. Was 60 years old when they were born, which means that Rebekah was 30 years old. The children grew up, and Esau became a hunter, while Jacob was a plain man that dwelt in the tents. Isaac loved Esau because of the venison he got, but Rebekah loved Jacob. One day, Esau came to Jacob from the field and was faint, and was fearing for his life, so he traded his birthright to eat some of Jacob's pottage. At first look, this seems a bit crazy, to sell your birthright for a bowl of soup. What if there was more to the story? In the book of Jasher, it fills in the blanks. And Esau at that time, after the death of Abraham, frequently went into the field to hunt. And Nimrod, the king of Babel, the same was Amraphel, also frequently went in with his mighty men to hunt in the field, and to walk about with his men in the cool of the day. And Nimrod was observing Esau all the days, for a jealousy was formed in the heart of Nimrod against Esau all the days. And on a certain day Esau went into the field to hunt, and he found Nimrod walking in the wilderness with his 2 men. And all his mighty men and his people were with him in the wilderness, but they removed at a distance from him, and they went from him in different directions to hunt. And Esau concealed himself for Nimrod, and he lurked for him in the wilderness. And Nimrod and all his men that were with him did not know him. And Nimrod and his men frequently walked about in the field at the cool of the day, and to know where his men were hunting in the field. And Nimrod and his 2 men that were with him came to the place where they were, and Esau started suddenly from his lurking place, and drew his sword, and hastened, and ran to Nimrod, and cut off his head. And Esau fought a desperate fight with the 2 men that were with Nimrod. And when they called out to him, Esau turned to them, and smote them to the death with his sword. And all the mighty men of Nimrod, who had left him to go to the wilderness, heard the cry at a distance, and they knew the voices of those 2 men, and they ran to know the cause of it. And when they found their king and the 2 men that were with him lying dead in the wilderness, and Esau saw the mighty men of Nimrod coming at a distance, and he fled, and thereby escaped. And Esau took the valuable garments of Nimrod, which Nimrod's father had bequeathed to Nimrod, and with which Nimrod prevailed over the whole land, and he ran and concealed them in his house. And Esau took those garments, and ran into the city on account of Nimrod's men, and he came into his father's house wearied and exhausted from the fight, and he was ready to die through grief, when he approached his brother Jacob, and sat before him. And he said unto his brother Jacob, Behold, I shall die this day, and wherefore then do I want the birthright? And Jacob acted wisely with Esau in this matter, and Esau sold his birthright to Jacob, for it was brought about by the Lord. So Esau was the one that killed Nimrod, and he was afraid of his life, that he would be avenged, so he sold his birthright to protect himself. That ends chapter 25. Chapter 26 primarily deals with Isaac living in the land around Gerar and his dealings with Abimelech. Genesis 27 begins, and Isaac tells Esau that he is getting old and wants him to make him some meat so he can bless Esau before he dies. So he goes out to find some venison, but Rebekah hears this and tells Isaac and hatched a plan, or she heard Isaac and hatched a plan for Jacob to get the blessing instead. She told him to go find the animals and bring them to her, and she would take care of the rest. Jacob tells his mother he is smooth while Esau is hairy, but his mom tells him to go out and get them anyways. So he goes out, and Rebekah gets some of Esau's clothing and puts it on Jacob. Isaac can't see very well, so when Jacob comes in, he can't tell it's not Esau, and he blesses him. Well, Esau comes back and finds out what happened, and he cries for his father to bless him too. Isaac says he will have land, but he will serve his brother. Esau gets really mad and wants to kill Jacob, so Rebekah overhears this and tells Jacob to leave and go live with Laban her brother in Haran. And that ends chapter 27. Next time on Revealing Biblical Truths, Jacob uses a rock as a pillow. I bet that was comfortable. Thanks for watching. Till next time, shalom.